My elder sister bragged about her life, forgetting I helped build it. When Mom told me I wasn't worthy to fill her shoes, I responded, and everyone went silent. Sephora sat quietly at her small desk, the soft hum of the city outside her window blending with the ticking of her old clock. She had grown accustomed to long nights spent meticulously planning, calculating, and arranging things behind the scenes while the world thought she lived a quiet, ordinary life. Few knew that she had been the steady hand behind her elder sister, Mona Lisa, guiding her from uncertainty to success without ever seeking recognition. Mona Lisa had always been vibrant, charming, and magnetic, a natural leader in social situations, capable of drawing people in effortlessly. But charm alone did not pay bills, secure opportunities, or navigate the complex world of business and career growth. That was where Sephora came in. Years ago, when Mona Lisa had graduated from college, she had been full of ambition but empty of resources. Her first apartment was modest, the rent barely affordable on her entry-level salary, and the idea of launching her own small business seemed almost impossible. Sephora had stepped in quietly, lending the money for the apartment deposit and helping her set up a basic budget. She spent countless nights teaching Mona Lisa how to track expenses, negotiate with landlords, and stretch her earnings to cover both necessities and opportunities. It wasn't just financial help. Sephora had a sharp mind for strategy and planning, the kind of foresight Mona Lisa lacked. She had guided her sister through early job interviews, rehearsing answers, coaching her on posture, tone, and the subtle ways to command respect in a room. When Mona Lisa had doubted herself, feeling lost in a sea of competition, it was Sephora who stayed on the phone with her until she could regain confidence. She had sat through nights of frantic calculations for Mona Lisa's fledgling business plan, suggesting supplier contacts, drafting marketing ideas, and even stepping in to negotiate initial contracts. Mona Lisa had begun to rise quickly. Her charm opened doors, yes, but it was Sephora's structure and strategy that kept those doors from slamming shut. With Sephora quietly supporting her, Mona Lisa expanded from a small online boutique into a thriving storefront, gaining clients, recognition, and even social influence. She bought her first car, moved into a larger apartment, and began attending events and gatherings that seemed far removed from the modest beginnings she had once known. Yet, as Mona Lisa's public profile grew, so did her sense of independence, or at least the appearance of it. She began to take credit, subtly, for achievements that had been built on Sephora's diligence. Social media posts celebrated Mona Lisa's grind and success, rarely mentioning the countless nights of research, negotiation, and guidance provided by her sister. Sephora noticed the small things, Mona Lisa laughing off advice as unnecessary, turning down help while simultaneously boasting of progress. But Sephora had learned patience long ago. She knew that family sometimes required quiet strength rather than confrontation, and she had chosen to love and support regardless. It wasn't only the practical support. Sephora had also been the emotional anchor for Mona Lisa. During moments of doubt, heartbreak, or professional setback, it was Sephora who offered perspective. She had cried with her sister, encouraged her to rise, and reminded her of her own resilience. While Mona Lisa presented the world with a confident, polished exterior, it was Sephora who ensured that the foundation beneath it was solid, capable of withstanding both financial and emotional storms. One particular memory still lingered vividly in Sephora's mind. Mona Lisa had been preparing for an important investor meeting, anxious and unsure. Her hands shook as she practiced her pitch in their small living room. Sephora had stayed up with her until the early hours, refining the presentation, role-playing investor questions, and helping Mona Lisa build the poise to answer confidently. The next morning, Mona Lisa walked into that meeting glowing with self-assurance, securing the funding she needed to expand her business. She later celebrated publicly, posting photos and stories of her triumph, yet did not mention the countless hours of preparation that had brought her there. Sephora's satisfaction came quietly, internal and private. She didn't need the world to know. Helping her sister succeed was reward enough. Still, there were small, quiet aches in her heart when she saw Mona Lisa casually dismiss or forget the role she had played. Invitations to family gatherings and social events often reminded her of the subtle snubs and the unspoken hierarchy that now seemed to favor Mona Lisa entirely. And that morning, when her mother had said something that cut through the quiet tension in their family home, words that implied Sephora was not worthy to fill Mona Lisa's shoes, all the careful patience she had exercised over the years was put to the test. Because in that moment, Sephora realized that no matter how much she had done, some people would only ever see the final image, Mona Lisa, successful, radiant, untouchable. They would forget the hands that built the bridge. Sephora took a slow breath and reminded herself of the truth she carried. She had created opportunities. She had taught, guided, and supported. She had been the invisible architect behind Mona Lisa's life. And no one, not even her sister or her mother, could erase that reality. Tonight, at the upcoming family gathering, Sephora knew the delicate balance would be challenged. It wasn't just about recognition. It was about dignity, respect, and finally, making others see the quiet work that had made Mona Lisa who she was. Sephora's heart was calm, but resolute. She had built the foundation, and now it was time for the truth to be acknowledged, even if it left some people shocked, frozen, and speechless. The sun had barely set when Sephora arrived at her family home, the familiar scent of baked bread and vanilla greeting her as she stepped inside. The living room was already buzzing with activity. Mona Lisa had invited her closest friends and extended family for what she called a celebration of success, her voice lilting with that self-assured charm Sephora had always known too well. Everything was perfectly arranged, sparkling decorations, plates stacked neatly with hors d'oeuvres, and music softly playing in the background. Sephora's entrance, however, didn't go unnoticed. Mona Lisa glanced up from her group, a wide smile plastered across her face. But there was a flicker, a fleeting moment of hesitation, before she regained her poise. Sephora. Mona Lisa's voice carried the practiced warmth of someone who wanted to appear thrilled. You made it. Sephora returned a polite smile. Of course, Moni. I wouldn't miss it. Her tone was even, calm, yet it carried a quiet authority that the room could feel, even if most didn't yet recognize it. Mona Lisa's friends whispered among themselves, clearly sensing the underlying tension. She didn't introduce Sephora with the usual warmth. Instead, her gaze lingered on her sister, as if measuring how much threat her presence might pose to the carefully crafted image she wanted to display. As the evening progressed, Mona Lisa began to subtly flex, talking about her achievements, the boutique she had expanded, the exclusive events she had attended, and the recognition she had received. Her words were laced with pride, each sentence punctuated by laughter and the occasional smirk. Sephora listened quietly, sipping her water. She nodded politely when appropriate, never interrupting, never allowing emotion to spill over. But she remembered every detail, every achievement that she herself had made possible. Each word Mona Lisa spoke was a reminder of the countless nights spent helping her prepare, the endless hours spent ensuring the foundation beneath her sister's success never cracked. Then, inevitably, the conversation shifted to their mother, Gloria, who was seated near the center of the room. You know, Sephora, Gloria said, her voice calm but with a pointed edge. Sometimes I wonder if you'll ever measure up to Mona Lisa. She's accomplished so much. Do you think you can fill her shoes one day? The room went quiet. Glasses paused midair. Forks hovered above plates. Everyone felt the weight of the comment. Sephora's eyes met her mother's, steady and unwavering. A faint smile touched her lips, soft but charged with a kind of quiet power that made people stop and think. Mom, she said slowly, why not ask Mona Lisa to settle your bills and payments first? Then we can talk about shoes. The room fell utterly silent. Conversation stopped. Laughter died mid-sentence. Mona Lisa froze, her mouth slightly open, unsure whether to laugh it off or retreat. Her friends stared wide-eyed, realizing for the first time that the confident, polished woman before them had not come alone to this party. She had come armed with truth. Gloria's hand trembled slightly as she set down her glass. Sephora, She began, but words failed her. Mona Lisa's face turned pale. For years, she had been untouchable in the family's eyes, the golden child whose charm and achievements dazzled everyone. And now, in a single statement, Sephora had undone the illusion. Whispers grew among the guests, many exchanging glances that acknowledged what no one had dared say aloud before. Sephora had been the real force behind Mona Lisa's success. Sephora stood tall, calm, letting the moment breathe. She didn't gloat. She didn't raise her voice. The silence itself amplified her words, her presence, her undeniable role in shaping Mona Lisa's life. Mona Lisa's friends shifted uneasily. Some looked embarrassed, others bewildered. Mona Lisa herself seemed frozen in disbelief, as if the realization of her dependence on her sister had just hit her fully. Sephora's eyes softened slightly as she glanced at Mona Lisa, not with anger, but with a quiet authority that only someone who had sacrificed and supported unconditionally could command. She had helped her sister rise. She had done the work, built the foundation, and tonight, she was finally being seen, not as the shadow behind success, but as the architect of it. And in that moment, the balance of power shifted. The air in the room felt heavier now, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Guests who had previously been chatting animatedly now stared in silent curiosity, sensing that something monumental had shifted. Mona Lisa, still frozen from Sephora's earlier remark, finally stepped forward, her hands shaking slightly as she tried to regain control. "Sephora, that wasn't fair," Mona Lisa said, her voice trembling but attempting authority. "I've worked hard for everything I have. You're twisting the truth." Sephora turned slowly, her gaze calm but sharp, cutting through the tension like a knife. "Twisting the truth," she repeated softly. "Mona Lisa, do you really want to deny the nights I stayed up helping you with your business plans? Or the countless times I lent you money when you couldn't pay your rent? The hours I spent coaching you for interviews, negotiating deals, and making sure your boutique didn't collapse? I didn't do it for recognition, but it's impossible to erase reality." A hush fell over the room. Even the adults in the family looked stunned. Some guests murmured among themselves, a mixture of disbelief and admiration at Sephora's calm but precise delivery. Mona Lisa's face flushed crimson. I didn't know you were keeping track of all that. It's just, I did the work, I made the decisions." Sephora's smile was faint but unwavering. "You made the decisions I prepared you to make. You took the opportunities one created for you. And for years, everyone, including you, has taken that for granted." Gloria, their mother, finally found her voice, though it came out weaker than intended. "Sephora, you're making Mona Lisa feel small. You should be proud of your sister, not confronting her in front of everyone." Sephora turned to her mother, eyes steady. "Mom, I am proud of her. That's why I helped her succeed. But pride does not mean silence when disrespect and ignorance hide behind charm and accomplishments. Mona Lisa has forgotten that success doesn't exist in isolation. It takes guidance, effort, and sacrifice." Mona Lisa's friends shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other, some whispering under their breath. They had only ever seen Mona Lisa's glamorous public image, the social media highlights, the confident persona. Now, that image was being dismantled quietly but completely by the very sister who had built the foundation. "And Mom," Sephora continued, her voice calm but commanding, "if you're truly going to judge worth, start by asking Mona Lisa to settle your bills before you decide who can or cannot fill her shoes." The room went completely silent. It was the kind of silence that carried weight, the kind that forced everyone to reflect on what had just been said. Mona Lisa's mouth hung open. She had no ready response. Her carefully constructed image of independence and brilliance was cracking in real time. Gloria shifted uncomfortably in her seat, realizing she had underestimated Sephora's resolve. Raymond, Mona Lisa's father-in-law, looked equally stunned, his earlier condescending smirk wiped clean by the truth of Sephora's words. Sephora didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her composure spoke louder than any shouting could. She had spent years quietly supporting, guiding, and sacrificing, and now, In front of the family, she had made everyone see it. Mona Lisa finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean to. Sephora shook her head gently. Intentions matter less than actions, Mona Lisa. And your actions have been loud enough for everyone to see. For years, I've been the unseen hand behind your success. Tonight, the truth is visible. The guests' murmurs grew louder, a low chorus of acknowledgement and surprise. Even Mona Lisa's closest friends couldn't deny the weight of Sephora's words. The room had shifted completely. Sephora had taken control without raising her voice, and Mona Lisa had no armor left to protect her ego. Sephora took a slow breath and looked around the room, her eyes calm and steady. She wasn't angry. She wasn't vindictive. She was simply presenting the reality. She had built, supported, and guided, and finally, she was letting the world see it. Mona Lisa, once untouchable, stood frozen, realizing in that moment that the narrative of her success, crafted over years of charm, hard work, and public perception, was incomplete without acknowledging the sister who had quietly shaped it. The confrontation wasn't over yet, but the balance had shifted. Sephora's presence, calm confidence, and unspoken authority had left an indelible mark, one that no one in the room could ignore. The room had quieted to a tense stillness, the kind of silence that feels heavy and unavoidable. Guests shifted uneasily, sensing that they were witnessing more than a family disagreement. They were witnessing a reckoning. Mona Lisa, usually so poised and radiant, stood frozen, her usual confidence shattered. Sephora remained calm, composed, her presence commanding respect without a single raised voice. Gloria, their mother, finally spoke, though her tone was unsteady. Sephora, I didn't realize, she trailed off, realizing that words alone could not undo years of overlooked contributions. Sephora turned toward her mother, her voice gentle but firm. Mom, I never wanted recognition. I've always wanted Mona Lisa to succeed. But pride and success don't erase respect. Tonight, the truth needed to be seen. Mona Lisa's friends murmured among themselves, some shifting uncomfortably as they processed the revelation. For years, they had only witnessed Mona Lisa's charm, her success, her public persona. Now, they were forced to confront the fact that much of that had been built on the quiet, relentless effort of Sephora. Mona Lisa finally spoke, her voice trembling. Sephora, I didn't know. I didn't realize how much you did for me. Sephora's expression softened slightly. It's not about realizing, Moni. It's about acknowledgement. Every night I stayed up helping you, every payment I covered, every conversation and strategy session, it all mattered. And it still matters. Not for me, but so you can understand the value of support, humility, and gratitude. The words hit hard. Mona Lisa's eyes filled with tears, a mix of shame and understanding. She had never truly appreciated the weight of what her sister had carried quietly all these years. Now, with the room holding its breath, she realized that Sephora had always been the foundation beneath her success, the unseen architect who had built the bridge that allowed her to walk so proudly. Gloria looked at both daughters, a wave of realization passing through her. I was wrong, she admitted, voice small. Sephora, you've done more than anyone could have asked. I should have recognized that sooner. Sephora nodded, accepting her mother's words. It wasn't about revenge or humiliation. It was about justice and acknowledgement. She had worked tirelessly, not for applause, but for truth. And tonight, that truth was finally visible to everyone. Mona Lisa, still trembling, stepped closer to her sister. Sephora, I don't know how to say this properly, thank you. For everything. For all the times I took you for granted. I see you now. I see how much you've done for me. Sephora smiled softly, a mix of relief and quiet pride washing over her. That's all I needed, Moni. Just acknowledgement. Everything else we can rebuild together. The guests, witnessing this exchange, could not help but admire Sephora's dignity and quiet strength. Her calm authority, The restraint she showed despite years of being overlooked had left a mark that would not be forgotten. Mona Lisa's friends looked at her differently now, respect replacing the admiration they once gave solely to Mona Lisa's charm. For the first time in years, Mona Lisa felt humbled, not humiliated, but humbled. She understood that success was never hers alone. The sister who had been patient, supportive, and unwavering had earned a recognition far beyond social status or applause. Sephora's power had never been loud or flashy, but it was undeniable. The rest of the evening continued in a different tone. Conversations were quieter, more reflective. Guests treated Sephora with newfound respect, realizing that her contribution to Mona Lisa's life had been monumental. Mona Lisa herself moved through the room with a different demeanor, humble, aware, and profoundly grateful. As the night wound down, Sephora looked around at the family, the friends, and the home filled with memories of the past and lessons for the future. She felt a quiet satisfaction, not from revenge, but from the acknowledgement of truth and the respect she had finally claimed. Mona Lisa approached her one last time before the guests left, holding her sister's hands firmly. "I promise from now on, I will never forget your role in my life. You are my sister, my guide, my rock. I will honor that every day." Sephora's smile was gentle, her heart full. "That's all I ever wanted, Moni. That's all I ever wanted." And with that, the night ended, not with humiliation, but with the restoration of balance, dignity, and respect. Sephora had proven, once and for all, that quiet strength, patience, and dedication could command power and recognition far more lasting than charm or self-promotion ever could. Ya lovelies. That's for today. Kindly subscribe if you haven't yet for more lovely and true life stories like this. Don't forget to give this story a thumbs up.